a continuation of a case I talked about, I don't know, within the last 6 or 8 months. It involves a district attorney by the name of Green out of Pennsylvania, who's a medical marijuana user and has sued the federal government to ensure his gun rights, Second Amendment rights. It comes out of Marijuana Moment from the 18th. Ben Adlin, and the headline is Biden DOJ pushes to dismiss gun rights lawsuit from Pennsylvania prosecutor who uses medical marijuana. Oh, damn him. It opens up by saying, in a new federal court filing defending the government's ban on cannabis users owning guns, the DOJ argues that the ongoing restriction is analogous to laws disarming the intoxicated and other historical laws disarming many disparate groups that the government believed presented a danger with firearms. And there we have it. People who smoke weed are a danger with their firearms, okay? And they're not trustworthy. When you dig into this, what we see is some of the same language come out of the DOJ that we just, are intimating from the last story about the DEA working with Kevin Sabet. This is the DOJ taking some positions that, in my view, are absolutely ridiculous and have an historical context. Like, Department of Justice argues that the ongoing restriction is analogous to laws disarming the intoxicated and other historical laws disarming many terrorist groups. We just talked about that. But taken together, these laws establish the principle that governments can disarm groups deemed dangerous with firearms, the DOJ's brief says. But even a closer connection to the reason for the dangerousness where required, that connection is provided by the laws targeting the intoxicated, mentally ill, who were disarmed based on concerns about impaired judgment and lack of self-control. Now, one of the themes running through this is the racial and the targeted drug laws against hippies back in the 1960s, and those who then were illegal drug users based on the war on drugs. And the arguments in this are that we can't be trusted. And if you go back and look historically, there are laws that disarm people who couldn't be trusted. Well, some of the premises in this argument didn't exist historically. And what the Supreme Court has been doing recently with gun cases, starting with Bruin and then to Rahimi, which you've talked about, is they said, no, we're going to go back to 1791 when the Second Amendment appeared in the Constitution. And it clearly says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What did that mean back in those days? Now, there was precedent that if somebody was under the influence of alcohol and they were dangerous, you could disarm them. I mean, think about Tombstone and the guys in the street, blasting away, he's drunker than Hogan's goat. The sheriff walks out, hey, we got to take your guns, all right? Okay, that happened, all right? But it was only temporary. And one of the problems that we're having with this blanket prohibition about having guns because you use drugs is that there's no due process in there. Historically, if you're going to be deprived of a right, you have to have actual due process. And the blanket prohibition against people who illegally use drugs does not afford anybody any due process. It's like if you belong to a group, boom, you're banned from having a weapon. Now, prior to Richard Nixon, this stuff didn't really exist, okay? And that's where these gun proponent or these gun law opponents of this are going to have a problem. Because, I mean, I don't know if I'm the oldest guy on this, so I remember Black Panther showing up strapped, okay? It scared the shit out of the white power structure. A lot of them, the segregationists ran, the Dixiecrats, the Republican Party. They did not want blacks to have rights. So 69, we get the first law against felons having guns, okay? There's something that we just can't pretend it didn't exist. And then Nixon, in his Southern strategy, he moved forward from there. And, in 69, Tim Leary kicked their ass. And they came out of that with the Controlled Substances Act, which criminalized marijuana heavily because he didn't like the hippies of protesting the war, and heroin heavily because he didn't like the blacks. Okay. We move forward, and we now have blanket prohibitions against owning and exchanging guns if you're an illegal user of drugs. Well, the drugs that are illegal were targeted at blacks and hippies. I'm an old hippie. You know, it pissed me off. Okay? Shouldn't be doing that. Now we move forward to today. The filings from the DOJ in this case, they drag out the old racial animus and the animus against hippies and people who use drugs, and they're saying, we don't trust you. The things in this that, oh, if you're going to be smoking weed and having a gun, we can't trust you. You're not going to go out and rob people to feed your habit. You know, really, that comes out of the mouth of an educated person today? It's in these filings, all right? So when we look at this, my belief is that the Supreme Court is not going to buy all the traditional bullshit they've been throwing. Now, what they might do about that, my crystal ball, you know, I'm keep talking to Apollo, and my crystal ball is just not that good. I don't know what's going to happen. But what I can tell you is what's coming is a Department of Justice that's going to be shaken to its foundations. I don't know if Gates is going to get there. I don't know. Okay, if they're going to object, there's going to be games being played, because he is clearly an anarchist. He wants to turn the apple cart upside down in the DOJ. And some of it will be this. Okay, and you cannot help but understand that drugs are going to be part of the discussion with Matt Gaetz. Okay, and that's part of this. If someone has used drugs in the past, does that disqualify them from owning and transferring guns? Okay. And that's a big question, because I don't think anybody's going to argue that Matt Gaetz has never packed his nose. Okay? All right? I don't know if he smoked weed or not, but he seems to like coke. And let's not forget Hunter Biden got prosecuted for having a gun while using coke. Okay, is that going to be another issue? Why do me as a user of cannabis can't be trusted to have a gun? I had a concealed weapons permit for years. Okay? I lost it over marijuana because I wasn't going to lie to the sheriff, and I wasn't going to, be in that position. I was trusted with a gun until they found that I smoke weed. Okay, so I've been part of this. It's ridiculous. If I like scotch, okay, and on Saturday night I get drunker than Hogan's goat, Monday morning I should be able to pack my gun, with my permit and go out and defend myself. Okay. Nobody argues that. But if I smoke weed on Saturday night, all of a sudden Monday morning, I'm not trusted to be able to have my gun. The logic here is ridiculous, okay? So I'm going to throw this back at you because we're going to talk about this as things continue. But what I see coming is, whether anybody likes it or not, going to have some serious discussions about the DOJ stance on drugs, and especially guns and drugs, and where are we going to go with that. And I think it's about time we did. I'm going to throw it back to you. What do you all think?
Yeah, Dale.
I mean, the hypocrisy is crazy, because you don't see any type of federal intervention. And to be clear, I'm not against the Second Amendment. I'm very pro Americans having the right to own firearms.
You're pro guns, huh? You're pro 2A, huh?
I sure am.
I love that, bro. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I did not take you for that.
Yeah, I'm a leftist. I'm a leftist, not a liberal.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm happy to help learn these distinctions between the two. I'm getting a little wrinkle in my brain right now.
There's data behind that, Jason.
Yeah, where I was going with this,
Jason.
Where I went to school in Arizona, when I was in school in Arizona, they passed a law that basically, first of all, they already have constitutional carry, so you can conceal carry a weapon there without a permit. They have private unregistered sales, a gun show loophole, and they passed another law while I was in school that said unless an establishment posts a no firearms sign citing a specific statute, you have the right to carry into that establishment, including bars.
Yeah.
So if you add those three together, you can engage in a private sale. So we're on the street corner, Jason, I could sell you a Glock for cash.
I'm down.
Registration, as long as you're not a felon. You can shoulder holster that motherfucker, put a jacket on, and walk into a bar, which is crazy.
I think it's great.
So my point is, I'm fine with the first two parts of that. I definitely don't think that people should be carrying firearms in bars. I think that's fucking asinine. But my point being, there's no federal intervention in states that allow things like that, and that's a huge point of hypocrisy. If the problem is that people who are intoxicated should not be handling firearms, then that should be the case across the board, and there should be. And again, I'm not.
I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair argument.
Of the federal government intervening in states. I am. I like the idea of states' rights, but I'm just saying this is a huge point of hypocrisy here.
Well, yes, and it is actually illegal to possess a gun of any type while you are intoxicated, no matter what substance you are intoxicated on. So like whether it be Hunter Biden riding around with hookers hitting the crack pipe, waving guns around on the 101, or it be whatever. It is definitely.
What if you're high off of love?
That was the best visual right there.
What if you're punch drunk love? You know what I'm saying? Like you just like.
In my visual of that, Jenny Beth, he had the top
I
down.
love when you interrupt my valid points for things like that.
I'm gonna shoot my shot. You know what I'm saying?
Literally.
But I mean, to Jenny, to your point, I've taken shots with people in bars in Arizona while they were open carrying on their hip, which is crazy.
I don't think that's that crazy.
Possession of that firearm became illegal, right? Because I mean, there's two attorneys on this panel. I'm sure they could tell you better than I can.
No, I don't think there's a law that says possessing a firearm while intoxicated is a crime in and of itself, especially if you're intoxicated by alcohol.
It's if you commit a crime, right?
I think it's unlawful discharge.
I got personally charged with it. That's the only way I know. Shout out to Colorado, open carry ass Colorado charged me with it.
In Colorado,
should have called Omar
You didn't lose your
Figueroa.
gun rights, though, did you? You didn't lose your gun rights, though, did you, Jenny Beth?
No, because the DA dropped that charge.
Okay, but see, what Omar and I understand is that there's a due process element of that. To make a blanket prohibition without a step along there to say, hey, were you really a danger? Okay, blanket prohibition, I think, is unconstitutional. That would be an argument. And, one of the things that we as attorneys look at is if you're going to file suit against the federal government and say what you're doing is unconstitutional, okay, and it involves a fundamental right, the government's got to pass strict scrutiny. Whatever they do has got to be necessary to achieve a vital, a critical government interest. They can't even come close to that test here, okay? Because they're arguing, the statute's constitutional. Well, maybe as written, but as it's being applied, it's not constitutional. They don't want to have that discussion. They want to say, well, we said it's like your dad. I said you can't do it. God damn it, don't do it. I'm going to spank your ass. Well, they ain't my parent, okay? We have an absolute right to keep and bear arms, whether people like it or not. If the government's going to take that away from you, they should have to jump through all the goddamn hoops. We shouldn't have to. We should have to say it's unconstitutional as it's being applied to us. And the court, I think this Supreme Court will say, you're absolutely right. You have to stop it. And that's going to be their punch bowl.
Let's do a thought experiment that there's a type of bar where you can have weapons, you can get intoxicated, and you can use those weapons. And they actually exist. It's not a thought experiment. It's an axe throwing bar. People are shit-faced and throwing an axe. That's a dangerous weapon. That's potentially a deadly weapon.
Yeah, hatchet throwing.
Circumstances. So I don't think society is having an honest discussion when they're trying to ban everybody who smokes cannabis in their off hours from possessing firearms when they're not intoxicated, while at the same time allowing for axe throwing bars where people get fucked up and throw axes. And I don't know what the stats are on horrific injuries at axe bars, but they stay open. Insurance companies give them insurance. It seems like society has found a way to balance the risks and allow this type of activity to continue forward. And I think it should be the same with, firearms. A good idea that needs to be discussed more often is, if you're going to be carrying a firearm, maybe you should be required to have insurance. Like, you have a right to have a car, but you also got to carry insurance because a car can cause so much death and destruction. Why shouldn't firearm owners who are in public have to have insurance?
So Omar, would that be considered a POW plan for your insurance?
What's POW?
For POW? POW?
I love it. I think that's a good marketing technique. But it makes sense, if people are going to be carrying guns in public, have insurance, just like with cars.
And shout out to the Cole Memo with a big old super chat who says, Hunter Biden, say what you will, he's fun to party with.
I'm sure they were saying that yesterday at Disneyland.
Oh, man.